This isn't just another video about love and obsession. This is the darkest truth you'll ever hear about the female psyche, one so raw, it'll change the way you see relationships forever. Because what you think you know about love, about desire, about how women and men suffer, is a lie. And once you see through that lie, you'll never fall the same way again. This isn't theory. This is real pain, encoded in literature, lived by men who bled for it, and whispered between the lines of Dostoevsky's most tormented novels. He didn't just write about suffering, he lived it. And his greatest agony began with a woman named Maria Dmitrievna. It was 1854. Exiled in the icy void of Siberia, Dostoevsky met Maria, stunning, married, and cold as frost. She didn't want him. And that's exactly why he became obsessed. For years, she teased his devotion. He wrote her letters soaked in humiliation. And when her husband died, she let Dostoevsky marry her, not out of love, but necessity. She needed stability. He needed her approval. What followed was a marriage of slow emotional strangulation. She mocked him, betrayed him, broke him piece by piece, and he called it exquisite suffering. And from that suffering came the first unshakable truth about female desire. What cannot be had becomes sacred. Dostoevsky didn't just live this. He wrote it into every shattered heroine he created. Look at Nastasia Philippovna from The Idiot, a woman so poisoned by her own self-loathing that she destroys every man who dares to love her. One ends up dead. The other loses his mind, or Grushenka. From the brothers Karamazov, who pits father and son against each other, not because she wants either, but because their war proves her power. They don't crave love. They crave worship. And once a man kneels, he's disposable. You think this is fiction? History is littered with women who turned male obsession into a game. Cora Pearl, the 19th century courtesan, didn't just bankrupt aristocrats, she made them beg for the privilege. Or the real-life inspiration behind the Marquise de Merteuil, who wrote, "I've never loved anyone enough to spare them." These women weren't outliers. They were simply the unfiltered version of a truth most men refuse to see. A 2017 study in personality and individual differences revealed something uncomfortable. Women rate men as more attractive when they believe other women want them. But once they win that man, interest fades, because the chase was the desire, not the man. Why? Why does attraction collapse the moment it's returned? Dostoevsky's answer is chilling in its simplicity. Humans are addicted to suffering. In Notes from Underground, his character moans, "To be overly conscious is a sickness, a real, thorough sickness." Women like Nastasia or Grushenka aren't evil. They're hyper-aware of their own value, and that awareness mutates desire into something dangerous. They don't want comfort. They want chaos. They want that electric ache of tension, of not knowing. And men, trained from childhood to believe persistence wins hearts, walk blindly into their trap. Imagine this. A man spends weeks trying to prove himself to a woman who's hot one day, cold the next. He tells himself, if I just try harder, she'd choose me. But what's really happening? Her brain isn't falling in love with him. It's falling in love with being pursued. And the second he gives her certainty, the game's over. She ghosts him, or worse, starts testing him to reignite the spark. This isn't guessing. It's psychology. B.F. Skinner's experiments on rats proved a terrifying truth. Unpredictable rewards create the strongest addiction. Affection. Withdrawal. Affection. Withdrawal. It's not confusion. It's conditioning. But Dostoevsky didn't stop there. He gave us a rare glimmer of redemption. A woman whose desire is built not on chaos, but sacrifice. Sonia, in Crime and Punishment, doesn't love Raskolnikov for his potential. She loves him despite what he's done, because she sees him not as a source of her worth, but as a flawed human being. She doesn't need to be chased. She doesn't test his devotion. She simply remains. But here's the cruel irony. Most men never meet a Sonia, because they're too busy chasing. Nasta. Sya. The tragedy isn't that female longing is dark. It's that men refuse to see the darkness until they're already bleeding. And now we descend even deeper into the next brutal law. When a man trades his strength for love, he loses both. Coming next, the raw truth about male weakness, female contempt, and the only power a man truly has, the power to walk away. There's a moment in the brothers Karamazov that most men miss. A moment that doesn't just explain a character. It explains everything. Dmitry Karamazov, wild, reckless, drowning in emotion, falls hopelessly in love with Grushenka. And he Knows she's dangerous. He knows she's cruel. He knows she's playing him. And yet, he crawls. He begs. He trades his dignity for breadcrumbs of attention. At one point, he even cries out, "I am a bug. I am a scoundrel. But I must have my happiness." And how does Grushenka respond? She laughs. Not with affection. Not with pity, but with contempt. Because here lies one of the most painful truths Dostoevsky ever buried in his fiction. Female longing turns to discuss the moment a man sacrifices his power. This wasn't poetic metaphor. This was Dostoevsky's life. After his first wife died, he became entangled with Apollinaria Soslova, a brilliant woman, and brutal. She mocked his epilepsy, paraded other lovers in front of him. She saw his suffering not as proof of devotion, but as weakness. And yet, he clung to her like a drowning man to an anchor. Why? Because like Dmitri, he believed pain meant love. But pain doesn't mean love. It means surrender. And surrender, to someone who does not respect you, is a death sentence. That history is littered with the wreckage of men who made this same mistake. Take Lord Byron, the poet who seduced Europe, but was shattered by his obsession with Countess Teresa Guiccioli. His letters to her read like confessions from a man in chains. I exist only when I am with you. The rest of the time I am dead. She used him for status, then replaced him with a wealthier man. Or Friedrich Nietzsche, whose descent into madness began when Lou Andrea Salome rejected him, then wrote in her journal that his neediness repelled her. These weren't isolated stories. They were inevitabilities. And modern science has caught up to what Dostoevsky knew 150 years ago. A 2015 study published in Social Psychological and Personality Science confirmed it. Women consistently lose attraction when men display overinvestment. Researchers called it the paradox of generosity. The more a man gives, the less she values him. Why? Because desire isn't built on fairness. It's built on polarity. Just like a magnet loses force when the poles weaken, attraction dies when a man gives away his center. Dostoevsky understood this better than anyone. In Demons, the character Stavrogen is a manipulator, a moral black hole, and yet women fall for him. Why? Because he doesn't care, and in that indifference lies his power. But here's where modern men make a catastrophic mistake. They see this and think, I need to be like Stavrogen, cold, cruel, unavailable. But cruelty isn't strength. It's just weakness wearing armor. The real solution lies in the idiot, in the quiet force of Prince Mishkin. He's kind, but uncheckable. When Nastasia tries to humiliate him, he doesn't rage. He doesn't grovel. He simply refuses to play, and that refusal, that immovable center, earns him the only thing that ever mattered: respect. That's the difference between Mishkin and Dmitri. One begs for love. The other is complete without it. So how does a man become that? Step 1. See the trap. Every time you chase a woman who disrespects you, you train her to devalue you. Step 2. Master the art of walking away, not to punish, not to manipulate, but because your dignity is not negotiable. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said it best: to become indifferent to women is the only way to regain one's freedom. He wasn't promoting loneliness, he was preaching sovereignty. Because the second you need a woman's approval, you're no longer free. Want proof? Look at the most seductive men in history. Casanova never begged, never confessed undying love. His genius was simple. He made women feel like they were chasing him. Napoleon, obsessed with Josephine, until she betrayed him, and when she did, he exiled her. No second chances. These men weren't strong despite their detachment. They were strong because of it. But Dostoevsky left us with a final, even darker truth, one that men almost never want to admit. Sometimes we crave the suffering. In Notes from Underground, the narrator confesses, man is sometimes extraordinarily, passionately in love with suffering. We chase the drama. The tears. The uncertainty. Not because we're fooled, but because we're addicted. And like all addictions, the only cure is withdrawal. But here's where things turn. Because what happens when the female longing turns inward? When the destruction isn't aimed at men, but at the women themselves. Now, we face the most tragic figure in Dostoevsky's world, the woman who hates her own desire. Coming next, the self-immolating female. Real women who burned down their own lives in pursuit of a love that could never save them. There's a scene in The Idiot that should haunt every man who's ever loved a broken woman. Nastasia Filipovna stands in a room full of men, holding a fortune to 100,000 rubles. Enough to buy her freedom, and what does she do? She throws it into the fireplace. The men scramble like starving dogs. clawing each other to salvage what they can. And Nastasia? She watches it all burn, laughing, but not with joy, not with power. With madness. This isn't the laugh of someone in control. It's the scream of a woman who hates herself so deeply. Destruction is the only language she has left. Dostoevsky didn't write that scene for drama. He wrote it to show where female longing ends, when it has nowhere left to go, when it doesn't enslave a man, but devours the woman herself. You want to see this outside fiction? Look at Anna Karenina, Tolstoy's answer to Dostoevsky's heroines. Anna doesn't just leave her family for love. She throws herself under a train. When that love fails to fill the void inside her. And this wasn't just a story. It was a cultural mirror. In 19th century Russia, the suicide rate among upper-class women in loveless marriages spiked so violently that newspapers called it the epidemic of the educated class. These women didn't die because they were weak. They died because they'd been sold a lie that romantic love would save them. And when it didn't, oblivion felt like the only escape. Dostoevsky knew that lie too well. His second wife, Anna Snitkina, was 25 years younger. A stenographer he hired to help him write The Gambler. She saved him from poverty, endured his seizures, worshipped him, and, in return, he immortalized her in his novels, not as a woman, but as a saint, the one who suffers silently while the man battles demons. But here's what no one admits. Anna Snitkina was the exception, not the rule. Most women like Nastasia Filipovna don't find a prince, Mishkin, to suffer for. They find men like Rogozhin, who love with a knife, or they find no one at all. Modern psychology has a name for this: borderline erotomania. A 2020 study in the Journal of Personality Disorders found that women with intense, unstable longing often engage in what researchers called relationship terrorism, deliberately provoking rejection to confirm a belief that they are unlovable. Not manipulation. It's self-execution. Want proof? Think of Edie Sedgwick, the tragic muse of the 1960s. She burned through fame, fortune, and heroin trying to impress Andy Warhol, whose cold indifference only deepened her spiral. Or Zelda Fitzgerald, who once threw herself down a flight of stairs to get F. Scott Fitzgerald's attention. She spent the rest of her life in an asylum, writing letters no one answered. These women weren't villains. They were casualties of a world that taught them their value was measured by how obsessed a man was with them. And when that obsession faded, so did their will to live. But why? Why does female longing, when turned inward, lead to such violent self-destruction? Dostoevsky answered that too, bluntly, in Notes from Underground. Man is stupid. Phenomenally stupid. Not because he lacks intelligence, but because he's so ungrateful. You couldn't find another like him in all creation. Women aren't foolish for wanting love. They're cursed by a society that told them love was the only prize worth winning. A man can build empires, fight wars, lose himself in science, in art, in philosophy. But a woman? Her battlefield is the heart. And when she loses there, when the love she gave everything for slips away, she is left with nothing but ashes. The ashes of her expectations. This is the real horror in Dostoevsky's world. It's not that women are manipulative. It's that they've been trained since girlhood to believe that desire is power, and being desired is survival. Grushenka doesn't just torment Dmitri, she torments herself. Her entire identity is tied to being wanted, and the moment that want wavers, she lashes out, not just at others, but at herself. Dostoevsky gives her a backstory too often ignored, one of childhood abuse. Because he knew. Female self-destruction is almost never rooted in vanity. It's rooted in trauma. In a world that taught her early that her body was her only currency. And this brings us to a hard question. If female longing is this unstable, this destructive, should men just walk away altogether? The red pill answer would be yes. Avoid love, avoid women, save yourself. But Dostoevsky's answer is more nuanced and more dangerous. The solution isn't escape. It's awareness. To recognize that this isn't a game. It's a tragedy, and the only men who survive are the ones who don't play the hero or the coward, but the witness. In The Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha does something extraordinary. He doesn't chase Grushenka. He doesn't try to fix her. He simply sees her, without drowning in her chaos. And in doing so, he becomes the only man she doesn't destroy. But maybe the real secret isn't understanding female longing at all. Maybe it's transcending it. What if the most powerful man is the one who feels desire, but isn't ruled by it? Coming next, The Lost Art of Transcendent Desire, the ancient philosophy that turns obsession into power, and the only freedom that can never be taken away. Buried in the final pages of the Brothers Karamazov lies a secret. Not in the dramatic courtroom, not in the speeches about God or justice, but in the quietest character of all, Alyosha, the monk. The man who walks through chaos untouched. While Dmitri burns and even collapses under the weight of his thoughts, Alyosha does something radical, something most men today have forgotten how to do. He loves without attachment. He desires, without being consumed, and that's Dostoevsky's final, forbidden insight. Freedom isn't the absence of longing. It's the mastery of it. We live in a world that gives men two false choices. Either submit to your cravings like Dmitri, begging, bleeding, sacrificing your soul, or suppress them like a monk, becoming numb, indifferent, disconnected. But there's a third path, a secret known to the ancients, and to Dostoevsky himself. Nietzsche called it the will to power, the Stoics called it apatheia, the samurai called it mushin, the mind without attachment. It is the ability to stand in the fire of desire and not be consumed. To feel deeply, but not cling. To love, but never beg. And this is what makes a man magnetic. Not manipulation. Not games, but sovereignty. History's most captivating men weren't enslaved by their lust. They were free from it. Casanova didn't seduce hundreds of women because he was obsessed. He walked away more often than he stayed. He made women feel seen, desired, but never possessed. When they clung too tightly, he vanished, not out of cruelty, but because no woman's need would define his life. Lord Byron, for all his tortured poetry, wrote something few quote: "The great object of life is sensation, to feel that we exist, even in pain." But even Byron knew, the moment sensation becomes obsession, the moment longing becomes need, the spell is broken. Modern science agrees. A 2018 Harvard study on dopamine revealed that the brain doesn't respond to pleasure, it responds to anticipation. The thrill lies in the almost, the uncertain, the maybe. This is why men who worship women, who give everything, are discarded. They've replaced desire with duty. And desire cannot breathe in captivity. But men who stay just out of reach, who give enough without giving all, remain unforgettable. Dostoevsky encoded this paradox in Svidrigailov, the predator from Crime and Punishment. By all moral standards, he's a monster. But he's magnetic. Why? Because he doesn't need anything. Not love, not approval, not even life. His final line before suicide: "I'm going on a journey, to nowhere in particular." That's the dark side of transcendence. Absolute freedom can look like madness to those still in chains, but there's a better path, a middle way, what the ancient Greeks called sophrosyne, the balance of the soul. You see it in Alyosha. He feels everything, yet loses nothing. You see it in Miyamoto Musashi, the samurai who wrote, "Do nothing which is of no use." He loved many women, but died alone by choice, not despair. These men weren't celibate. They weren't heartless. They were complete. So how do you become that? It begins by recognizing what desire really is. A fire. It can warm you, or it can burn you alive. Step 1. Control the flame. Feel the longing, but never let it dictate your worth. Step 2. Embrace the Stoic law, the dichotomy of control. Wanting is natural, needing is slavery. Step 3. Fill your life with purpose so vast, no person could ever eclipse it. Dostoevsky survived Siberia because he had his writing. Napoleon conquered Europe because he had his vision. Nietzsche endured isolation because he had his philosophy. The moment a man makes a woman his reason for existing, he signs his own death sentence. Because here's the final, most vital truth. Female longing is not the enemy. Male weakness is not the enemy. The real enemy is the delusion that love will save you. It won't. Only you can do that. Alyosha knew. Musashi knew. Nietzsche knew. And now, so do you. But this isn't the end. It's the beginning. Because now that you've seen the pattern, the game, the war for your soul, you have a choice. You can keep playing, chasing shadows, begging ghosts to love you. Or you can become the one man who can't be played. The battlefield is your mind, and the weapon? Everything you've just learned. Use it.